The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
God, that music is... Well, hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm CJ.
And it's a Wednesday, and boy, it's the Wednesday after a city council meeting, and wow, do we have all kinds of controversy.
What happened to decorum? I mean, I can remember very clearly at the first city council meeting that Sean Kadim said, I will maintain decorum. There will be no outbursts. There will be no lack of decorum within this council chamber. Yet last night, the city council and the mayor had no decorum. I mean, it was unbelievable. And, you have to say to yourself, who's got control of this circus? Because it was unbelievable. I was watching it I was up until 2:30 this morning watching this over and over and over again. And I was like, this can't be real. And then Mayor Brown couldn't make it last night, so they said, we'll put that off to address net school spending, but the state's already addressed it. So why are we addressing it again? But I thought the pièce de résistance, the wonderful part of the evening was when the mayor put himself in the well in the city council chamber without an invitation. Talk about violating every protocol under the sun. And honestly, I had to review it several times. He acted like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. He was sitting there saying, let me explain this. I've already done this and I've already done that. He's unbelievable. And, many people throughout the evening and this morning on other media outlets were saying very clearly, this was ridiculous. A former mayor came out and said, you have decorum. The president can't go into the House or the Senate without an invitation. The governor can't go into the House or the Senate without an invitation. But the mayor thinks he can go into the city council chamber without an invitation? And they said very clearly, we need to waive the rules. Oh, we're in finance. I don't care what you were in. The mayor wasn't invited. And he needs to definitely pay attention to decorum. And if he's not going to, how can you have any decorum? How can you have any privileges? How can you have any rights? You don't get them that way. And the problem is this. He said throughout his campaign, I'm going to work with the city council. I'm going to have an open door. We're going to get together. But last night, I think the city council made it very clear. We're not going to work with you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to shove this one right up your backside. Because every single one of them, okay, that normally spoke, which they shouldn't have, because you know what they say, it is better to be thought the fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. So, a lot of it last night was it was all petty tantrums. And they picked on things that were unbelievable. So, put your personal opinions aside. Don't throw your tantrums. And Mr. Mayor, honestly, go back to school, because obviously your education in poli-sci and political science was very ineffective, because this isn't the first time you've acted like a spoiled child, not getting your way, and you've got to stop that.
Oh, well, obviously, everybody knows I've gone on record as, I like the House of Commons. I like a little rowdiness and a little liveliness.
I didn't say it was bad.
In a debate. No, I know you didn't. But I think, anything to an extreme is no good. I mean, when we begin to lose perspective on doing the business of the city, that's when you have to draw the line. But the reality is that, we really do need a government where there are checks and balances. You can't agree with everything the mayor says, and you can't disagree with everything they say. The criteria has to be, is it good for the people of Fall River? And the reality is, I'm glad to see the council scrutinizing things. I mean, I said I'd give them, the benefit of the doubt, and, I'm not talking about decorum, but the fact is, I agree not putting every job into ordinance. I agree with not having political jobs that are created, made virtually impossible to ever get out of the system again. And I'm glad that they're looking into things like contracts and say, if you can't have clauses where these people can manipulate and get big raises, all we have to do, ironically enough, all we have to do is look down the road to Taunton. And I saw a piece on Channel 10 News last night about the chief of staff in Taunton. The mayor is attempting to raise her salary from $42,000 to $73,000, and which is absurd. $70,000 for an assistant, and I don't care what kind of title. It's like calling a janitor a sanitary engineer. He's doing the same job, but if you call him a sanitary engineer, you got to double his pay. Well, look, and he said, well, that's what they're getting. Well, that's one of the problems with government. They come up with these justifications. All we need to do is have one city or town give somebody some obscene raise for doing virtually nothing, and then every other single politician throughout the state will say, oh, they did it in Taunton, because you know what's going to happen next if they do it in Taunton? Fall River's going to say, oh, our mayor's going to say, oh, my guy's only getting $45,000. Let's raise his salary to $75,000. This is the problem with government. This is what they do. This is what they do best. Spend your money and create jobs and pay not the people who do the work, but the people who they give jobs to ridiculous money. And I'm glad to see the council disagreeing. And as far as the mayor going down into the well, look, I hate to tell you this, but a little civics lesson here. We have a legislative and judicial and an executive branch of government. You are the executive branch, Mr. Mayor. You are not the legislative branch. And when you walk into that council chamber uninvited, you are just a regular citizen. And you just can't walk into the well and decide to take over. As CJ said, if you watch the State of the Union address, they announced the president, and he was invited there. You can't walk into those chambers. It's a different branch of government. And that's what it's supposed to be. Checks and balances. Everybody's not supposed to agree. That's another Goebbels lie that they try to foster on the people of Fall River, that somehow it's negative, the big word, it's negative not to agree with every single thing. So you got one camp saying, oh, they won't let the mayor do anything. And you got the other camp saying, the mayor's trying to do, I don't like what the mayor's doing. Well, forget about it. That's got nothing to do with who's doing who to what or to whom. But the fact is, it's what's good for the people of Fall River. And I believe, and it's my opinion, that putting jobs, especially these political jobs, in ordinance is the worst possible thing you can ever do, because you'll never get rid of them. And just like these little attachments that all these administrators get that say, if they give anybody else a raise, you can come back in and you can get a cost of living based on a consumer price. That's what our state legislators did. That's what the mayor had in his contract. That's what the city council had in there where they were getting automatic pay raises. And I will tell you something. I negotiated for 24 years against this city, and every single time I negotiated with the city of Fall River, when they asked me what I wanted for a pay raise, I said the same clause that you have. I don't want a pay raise. I'll take zero. You give me the same language that gives me an automatic raise based on a consumer price index. And you know what they told me? Are you nuts? We're not going to do that for you. Why? Because we have to work for a living. But the people who are political hacks get to have clauses like that where you never know they're getting a pay raise. It's just automatic. Cost of living goes up, they get a pay raise. Well, it's not. It's a cost of living adjustment. That's politics. This is what's wrong with government, which segues me into Atlantic City. They're preparing to declare them bankrupt. And they did a study. What was the ratio? How many workers did they have in the city government of Atlantic City in comparison to others?
I think it was like 1,100 to 1.
Yeah, it was absurd, and that's what happened, because when Atlantic City was the only casino industry in the eastern United States, they were making huge money. And what did they do with that gigantic money?
Politicians' pockets.
They gave everybody they knew a job, they lined their pockets, and they did nothing for the city of Atlantic City. And now the city of Atlantic City is going to be bankrupt, and it's a mess. Why? Because the casino industry, and let's not get into a gambling thing here, because just like everything else, now everybody opened up gambling. Philadelphia, which is less than an hour ride away, opened up gambling. That really hurt. And now with all the casinos opening up, it's become an extremely competitive, industry. But it's the same thing that happened with the textile industry in Fall River, the steel industry out in Pittsburgh and areas like that, the auto industry in Detroit. Cities putting all their eggs in one basket, looking for one industry to create and create all its economy and cure all its problems. The only problem with that is those industries don't last forever. There will ultimately become competition, and ultimately that industry might fail, as our auto industry did, as the steel industry did, and as now the casino industry in Atlantic City is doing. It's not a Las Vegas destination. And, but the reality is, what do we get from this? Let's look beyond the bankruptcy. Let's look at what caused this, the underlying cause. The underlying cause is politicians raping and pillaging as much as they can. And if you look at how many city employees they have, very high-paid city employees, it's horrifying, because nobody cared when they had tons of money. Now somebody's looking and saying, holy crap, how do we get this many people working here? We got like 5 times the number of people doing it that other cities do. Why? Because what have we said on this show a million times? You give the government the Sahara Desert and they'll run out of sand in 5 years. And, within 5 years, they'll be out of sand. And that's what you do. That's what they do best. They don't fix anything. They have studies, they give their friends jobs, and they don't give a crap. And it's up to us to make them do it.
Yeah, well, I looked at the Atlantic City issue, and, we talked about this earlier in the week, off air. And I call it a tale of two cities, because Fall River was in the same thing. And as you said, we put all our eggs in one basket. And you know what you get when you put all your eggs in one basket? Scrambled eggs. I mean, bottom line. And we start looking at these things, and, we're dumping money into drug czars, okay? And it came very clearly out last night at the city council meeting. We don't need to focus on abuse prevention. We need to focus on prosecution. We need to focus on stopping the drug trafficking and the drug dealers. So who cares about prevention? The school system already has that in place. That's being handled by outside nonprofit agencies, okay? We need more police officers. And the chief has said several times, he needs a complement of at least 235 police officers. The fire department has said the same thing. Okay, and that's why I firmly believe we need to take police and fire out of the political realm and place that in ordinance. And I'm not big on placing things in ordinance, but putting in an ordinance which says the Fall River Fire Department shall be staffed according to NFPA standards. I won't put the number in because God knows what the number will be in 5 years. Because it could be 1710, 1720, 999, 666, who knows? But, if we take that whole thing out of the political realm where they have any control, they're not going to have a choice. And they do, and this kind of segues into what I'm talking about here with net school spending. Okay? That's set by state law. The city can't get around it. Although they try and they fight, they spend more money on fighting meeting the net school spending than they do in meeting it. And when you do that and you take it out, yes, we have to fund it now, because guess what? You got no choice. So maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should get the people together and say, hey, you know what, Mr. Mayor? You know what, City Council? We're tired of you saying we got to cut fire because we don't have enough money and we have to raise taxes otherwise. Because the minute they do that, everyone says, oh, we can't do that. We got to have fire. We got to have police. If you can't use that as a threat anymore, what are you going to use next? So, but into the net school spending, you know, the Herald News published a story this week, and we had already known about it, that the state had already weighed in on Florida's net school spending disputes. And you know, the kicker is they have to allocate an additional $1.5 million. I just spoke with Kathy Ann about this on Monday. Oh, well, we have the money. Well, let's see. You've got $1.2 million allocated to the trash fee, creating a new tax, in my opinion, and according to state law, and according to an opinion by a court. But we're going to do that anyways, and DOI said, the heck with you. So,
No, I'm just like, go ahead.
yeah, no, you have to laugh about it.
It is.
And now you've got 1.5 going to the school system that has to be paid, and we still haven't met last year's. Still haven't met last year's fiscal year 2015's net school spending requirements. So that's $2.7 million out of 3.3 in free cash, and they're already spending that. So if we have a catastrophe, what are we going to do? You know, it just gets to be so ridiculous. And they're still arguing. They're saying, oh no, you know, because the amount's going to carry over to the next year. The amount, and they keep saying we can carry over 5%, 5%. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. And the city needs to spend an amount just shy of $133.2 million a year, set by charter. What's the problem? If you know, if that's a fixed cost every year, why do you have such a problem meeting that net cost? I'll tell you why. Because you hire your political butt kissers. Okay, and maybe last night having Jazel have his bottom spanked the way it was, all right, in the city council chamber, if he receives it that way and says, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. We know that the position for the new DCM director is filled. We know that, and we know that it's going to be one of his minions. We know that as well, okay? And it's going to be $98 million, and this was brought up last night. So we got two positions, not 98. Kenny Pacheco's getting a $15,000 a year pay cut, and he's being moved to another department. And I don't always agree with Linda, but I'll tell you, when she turns around and says, you have a guy who has dedicated a good portion of his life to this city, has done tremendous work, has done everything possible to make everything move forward the right way, but you know, after you're done doing all the things that you've done, we're going to kick you into another department and give you a pay cut. That makes me want to stay. That makes me want to work here. And he goes, well, I've cut 4 positions. And he has no intentions, he said last night, I'm going to quote him, I have no, and these positions are required, remember this, I have no intentions of hiring a treasurer or a assessor. That's why I gave a permanent $7,500 increase to the second in command in those departments.
Yeah, well, you know, to hell with law, and you know, if it's required by statute, ultimately it's going to get them. But you know, this is the whole key to the problem, the crux to the problem here. You know, we see government at it, you know, we're beginning to look, and it's great because people in Fall River are beginning to look closely, and people throughout the country. This is the reason everybody's disgusted with government, because, you know, there's 2 jobs where you can screw up all the time and never get fired, and most of the time you get a pay raise. That's being a weatherman or a politician.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's the reality. And it was nice to see, you know, I mean, we've got this article about the state sends erroneous tax forms out to people because somebody can't make a simple code. It only happens once a year. You send out a 1099. It's going to cost $35,000 to correct it. And who pays? We do. And what's going to happen to whatever bonehead did this or whatever group of boneheads did this?
We'll give them a raise and a
You know,
promotion.
we'll probably give them a raise. And it was nice, I have to say, it was nice to hear some people in the city council catch up with Spindle City Straight Talk. You know, when Steve Long started talking about percentage of people living below the poverty level, it's something we've been talking about for a very long time, and I spoke about in front of the council numerous times. But it's also nice to hear him talk about the nonprofits. We talked about nonprofits, I don't know, a long time ago. And he's right. We give everybody a TIF, And if you don't get a TIF, you're exempt from taxes anyway. And he's 100% right. Charlton Memorial Hospital is a nonprofit hospital. Really? They spent $1 million on a FOIA to improve their FOIA. I want to see publicly what the board of directors' salaries are in a nonprofit, and I can guarantee you some of them are making nearly $500,000.
If not more.
If not more. Because I remember years ago when I was on a board of directors with the CEO of Charlton, in the Fall River Regional Task Force Board of Directors, I know their board of directors were making almost over $200,000 then, and that was during the Carlton Viveris administration. So don't talk to me about nonprofits. You're paying your board of directors millions of dollars. And what do? They show up a couple times, once a month or something like that, and they, you know, and they all figure out where they're going to go on their next vacation. And they're a nonprofit. They're a nonprofit like, you know, I'm Santa Claus. You know, the fact is that they're a nonprofit to protect themselves from lawsuits because you can't sue a nonprofit. It's capped how much money you can get after they kill you. So, and that's a fact.
I know.
It's a fact. You know, they remain a nonprofit. As far as I'm concerned, nonprofit unless we have socialized medicine in this country, there should be no hospital unless it deals with only indigent patients should be a nonprofit. Because that's the biggest crock I ever heard in my life. We provide police protection, fire protection, and to those things, and I remember spending half my life at Charlton Memorial when they put in a new alarm system, and it was coming in anywhere from 5 to 10 times a day because there were all kinds of problems. And what do they pay? Big fat goose egg. And Steve Long is right, but you know why they don't get charged? They all donate to the politicians. They all donate. Even the janitors at Primacare gave $500 to Flanagan. Everybody that worked in the building. And you're not going to tell me a janitor scraped up $500. That was coming. Somebody gave him that to give them. And there should have been an investigation about that, as far as I'm concerned, by the United States Attorney General. But the fact is, this is the way the game is played. They play while we pay. And I'm glad to see the council do it. And the decorum factor, well, like I said, I've always been in favor of the House of Commons. You know, if it was up to me, I'd give them like, wiffle bats and let them attack each other. But
I'll tell you.
But as long as some really lively debate is good, and they're supposed to check with each other. But we get back to that thing I continue to harp on. That is, the only criteria that should be used to determine what the right course of action is, it is what is in the best interest of the people and taxpayers in the city of Fall River. I'm tired of hearing, they're not letting the mayor do what he wants to do. Well, if what he wants to do is wrong, they shouldn't be letting him do it. And if the city council blocks him from doing something right, they should be condemned. But to say that, to look at these things and bring up ideas like Steve Long did about something, an idea that's, by the way, has been bantered around for a long time. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Nonprofits should get a fee. Nonprofits pay in Cambridge, the second richest community of our size in the state. They pay in a lot of communities. They pay a fee for service that they receive, and justifiably so. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to hear that they're a nonprofit. When you're paying your board of directors $500,000, I'll tell you what, I'll take that nonprofit job.
Well, Chip, nonprofit doesn't mean that you don't make money. Nonprofit just means that on paper, you don't make money.
Exactly. So if you're making too much, you build $1 million FOIAs just to waste money. Exactly. That's what you do, yeah.
But the thing that I think was great, and I mean, I like Madeline Coelho. She's the Human Resources Director for the City of Fall River. She's always been very cooperative. She's always answered my questions. You work with her regularly. I find it very interesting that they picked out one line in her contract that we're talking about and said, no, I want a line item veto. You don't even have that authority, but you made the effort to show that you're looking out for John Q. public taxpayer. And while I may not agree with Richard Cabaceres on a lot of things, I think that took a lot of guts. But I will tell you one thing, Linda went off yesterday that was unbelievable. And if you haven't watched the show, go to frgtv.us, click on video on demand, and watch the show. It was unbelievable. It was an absolute farce. And honestly, I think it could win an Emmy for a comedic drama.
Well, you are right, and I have to say, number one, I do work with Madeline Coelho. We have, as a matter of fact, we have 3 meetings scheduled next month of the IAC. And she does a very, very good job. She works hard. She's a hard worker. She's very, very conscientious. That department is at the top of the line for service. When my people call there, the people who work in that department always try, and they work really hard to fix the healthcare issues and the problems. So she does a very good job. But I may not, as you, I disagree with Richard Cabaceres on a lot of things. But he was right on target with that. And, unfortunately, they don't have that power. But you're right. It's nice to see they're looking at this because, you know something? That, as I said before, is one of the problems. You can't give these people special consideration that you don't give the rest of the people. We've created a monarchy here, and you can't allow people to get virtually automatic pay raises when the city workers don't. And he was 100% right when he said you can't expect the sacrifice to be shared and ask for no pay raises across the board for the people who are actually out there in the trenches and then have things like this in the contract. As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't only stop at the city of Fall River. If I had my way, I would eliminate the automatic cost of living raise for all our state legislators, because that's the way they conned everybody after they got crucified for giving themselves a pay raise on Halloween night, the Halloween night massacre.
Yeah.
That's right. And so how did they fix that? They said, the hell with these clowns. We'll never, ever ask them to approve our pay raises again. We're going to just write into the law that we get an automatic pay raise. And you know something? If you and I can't get an automatic pay raise, they shouldn't get an automatic pay raise. Kudos to Linda Pereira for what she said last night. She was on target. And as I said, we'll always give credit where credit is due. Kudos to Linda. She was on target. Richard Cabaceres was on target. Steve Long was on target. It was good. And it was nice to see that they're examining these things, and it was good. And as far as the decorum, well, I like it, but I think Sean said he was going to keep things very, very within the decorum, so I guess he's going to have to work on it.
Yeah, well, the big thing is, and we only have a few more seconds, last night on social media, it went nuts, and they actually started posting pictures of Linda with recall. I was like, the word is beginning to have a negative connotation, and guess what? Yes, you're right, but it's the last-ditch effort. Okay, work with these councils and find out. And you know what, Mr. Mayor? Don't expect us to just fall in lockstep with you because I don't do the goose step. Sorry.
Stay angry.
And have a great week. We'll see you Friday.